Welcome to Smart Driven Women. I'm Rona Jobe. Here, impactful women leaders and entrepreneurs come to share how they navigate their complex careers and personal lives. We look at the strategies that help them excel in the boardroom and at home, all packed into a focused 24 minutes. Whether you're beginning your journey, overcoming obstacles, or in a season of transition or growth, join us on Smart Driven Women for inspiration and strategies that move you forward. Our guest today is Laura Jennings, a friend and a business partner of mine. She is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of LVL-Up Strategies. She has over 20 years of experience in marketing, communications, business development, and event production. And fun fact, although maybe not so fun going through this along the way, she is a serial entrepreneur. She's held and run businesses in 5 different countries. And of course, she is a spouse to a foreign service officer out of Berlin, Germany, and a certified team and culture building facilitator. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
I'm a little nervous because this is our very first episode, and I really want to appropriately set the stage so folks know what's coming in the full season with the other guests that we'll have on. So I'm really excited that you've come on to help me do that.
Well, I'm happy that you're doing this podcast at all. It's really impactful. I think it's going to make it's going to make a difference in how people see themselves and where they could go.
I think so. And I think a lot of women out there who have been doing the career progression stuff and the parenting stuff and being part of their community too, don't necessarily sometimes think of them as driven all the time, but I think that they are. And when you just keep swimming and swimming and swimming and you don't really realize, I am a swimmer. These are the things that I've just been doing.
So talk to me about that a little bit. Tell me who is the persona you're looking to have on the show?
First and foremost, I would love to I have plans, and we have already reached out and have laid out the first season of women leaders in business, in organizations, in communities. And so I'm really excited for this first season for all the folks who have said yes to being sort of our guinea pig, right, for this first go around. And the more I talk to people about it, the more like, I know other people who should be on that podcast, who should talk about what they're doing on a day-to-day, who should talk about how they overcome obstacles, what's their cadence for that, what's their typical strategy for that. And I would love to hear from them, how do they actually get over hurdles? How do they prioritize different parts of their lives? And how do they intertwine the many different things that they do and stay impactful? A lot of what you're going to hear about is how women don't work in silos. They don't go, okay, I've left the office and that's the office, and I'm going to treat that as just the office. Everything I've learned there is staying there. And they don't say, okay, I've left the home and that's done. Everything that I've learned there, everything that I do there is staying there. I think what you'll find is that women take and learn from everywhere that they go and they apply. And that's what you're going to find in a lot of these smart driven women. Most women who are parents also that you ask, like, how does your leadership style change with every season of your life? They will go, I learned this and I apply it here. I learned this and I apply it here. They don't necessarily go, nope, this is just for the home. This is just for work. And that's all there is. There's no silo between the different parts of women's lives. They all learn from one another, almost like AI.
Yes. I was literally just talking to my daughter the other night and had to pull out my notebook because it was something I had written, for LVL-Up, and said, talking about that females are up, they evolve, and they had whatever you wanted 1, 3, 5 years from now, you may not still want that. You may not still want to be there because you are forced to evolve. It's not even about having kids. I mean, women just by our nature have to, our bodies change, our everything about us changes, and we have to be like, okay, this is now me. Okay, this is now me, and much less if you do decide to get pregnant, then your body is not yours,
Yeah. Yeah, right. There's literal changes happening.
So I think we're accustomed to evolving, and I think that evolution keeps us knowing that we can be okay with moving forward.
Yeah. And I like how the discussion, what you see on social media, even nowadays, is a lot more welcoming of that notion. I feel like when I was first going to college, there was very much like, oh, you have to decide your major, and your major is your major, and that's what you're going to go into, and what does that lead to as far as career versus. And I don't know if it's just the older you get, the more people you meet who have had shifts in their careers, who've had career pivots, throughout their years. And I don't know if that's just because people are more welcoming of it nowadays, or because people are more open to talking about it, or that's just a cadence of being a woman that we haven't talked about before.
It is happening in school a little bit. We have a junior, and she's feeling the pressure to define, to identify as one thing and be that. And it's a lot of pressure. And I think that is a patriarchal construct, honestly, that need to define. So as we continue having these conversations, and you're making this space for this conversation for people to talk about their journeys, I think it will become more and more apparent that it's not necessary to define. It's just necessary to be driven, to keep wanting to go forward.
And finding out what works best for you, or how to approach the different obstacles that come your way when you're trying to decide on a new career, you're trying to decide on where you're going to go in the next 5 years. I mean, for foreign service spouses, especially, we don't say we're going to go to this post, or, our spouse is accepting this post, and that's just going to be our identity, right? You just go, yep, this is another post, and here's our cadence, and here's our strategy for preparing for that, PCSing, and coming out of that, and then getting back into my regular rhythm of running, or of whatever that is that you're doing.
My portable, transferable skills.
Yeah.
So my husband asked me, I was telling him about this podcast, and he's like, so who are some smart driven women that you look up to? And we did end up having a really strong conversation about it, because maybe I shouldn't say strong. We didn't get into a fight. Like, I don't know. We had like an interesting conversation about it, because, we kind of were like, yeah, it's so hard to define necessarily one kind of strong driven woman. Maybe their strength is from the journey. Maybe their strength is from the results. Maybe their strength is from, things that are you might look at somebody and on the outside think, oh, well, they were set up in this way. They came from money. They have this, they have that, but that doesn't mean they had to keep pushing to get to the success that they had. So sometimes it's the journey of adversity. Sometimes you're planted somewhere.
Yeah. So sometimes it's that efficiency, effectiveness that you're looking for. And I feel like a lot of smart driven women tend to ask, what are the 5 things I can impact with one thing that I'm doing? Or what are the 2 things that I can impact with one thing that I'm doing? An example was, I started biking to work when I was in my early 20s. And the reason I started biking wasn't one single reason. It was 1, I got my exercise out of the way. It was 2, I saved money on the metro. And it was 3, it was a good way to connect and network with others who also bike to work. And so there's multiple things that you're trying to reach or you're trying to hit with one single action. So I feel like a lot of smart driven women function that way as part of their identity that they may not be able to fully verbalize all the time. But if they look back at what they've done, they're like, yeah, that's what I've done.
That's really telling of a little bit about who you are too, because that impact and in reaching potential and things, those are important to you. And and then for someone like me, it's more like I mean, obviously want to have the impact be there. I also worry about the journey. I want to make sure that the journey it has, is done in a way that's not always going to be the fastest or the easiest, but it is like I can look back on it and feel proud of it. What do you think? And the two of us are very different. We run a company together though, and we I think complement each other. But what do you think some smart driven women come up against when it's not necessarily do it this like this is the way I did it. You should do it this way.
What's interesting is I feel like you and I have very similar but different answers to that based on the different people that we've worked with. Because I could ask you the same thing with the smart driven women in your life or that you've worked with. What are they on the business side and on the personal side? I think a lot of smart driven women on the younger side struggle with the idea that they have to balance and have it all. And they look at these women who are in their 50s and 60s and they go, oh my gosh, she did that. She did that. She did that. And I would love for us to have people on the podcast lay out, actually, this is what happened and this is how that happened. And here are the realities with this life. And here are the challenges that I went through and why I had to pause and which way did I pause? Because I think for especially the younger generation now that are at a crossroads, sometimes they think that they have to decide one way or another of how they're going to approach their life as a young mother, their life as a person who's deciding not to have kids.
It's that judgment, right?
Yeah. Like younger women now, as in, folks in their 20s and early 30s, and even young kids that are in high school, right? They fear sometimes that when they make a decision or if they can't do something right the first time, they fear that it's just not going to go well down the line. And then they look at all these more experienced women, traveling the world, running their companies, being mentors, and they're like, geez, I don't know. I don't even know how I'm going to get there.
And it seems like they're so far away from who that person would be, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
And do they even want to make the commitment to do the work to be there? Right.
Right.
Yeah. When I was starting one of my companies, I was taking some courses for it and we were all in the room and the instructors that we had were very dead set against a certain method, certain way of doing the work. And actually in a lot of the courses I've taken, when I went for my project management, also dead set on a singular particular method. And I think that as there has been more women in spaces, more women coming into these spaces, that you don't have to just be the only one. There's room for more of us. So we are lifting each other up a little bit more than we maybe used to. I think now the intimidation really comes from everything you do being so public, and there's a lot of advice out there for people to, if you have a goal that you want to achieve, start communicating it. Tell people that you're going to achieve this goal. And I know that that's what my daughter goes through right now. Like I've told people that I want to go into, selective schools and I want to be, in a selective profession. And what if I don't make it? And I just keep coming back to there's support all around you now, that it just wasn't there. It certainly wasn't there when my mom was one of the few women in the workforce. When women were emerging more into more executive level positions, then there certainly wasn't, women were competing against each other in a way. So now, I'm not saying it's perfect, but there is definitely, like you said, you're part of this networking group of really well-established women. And so there are people to talk to, people to ask, people to help you define if this is the right direction for you and if you should maybe go a different way. And people who are there to say, you don't have to go that way just because you said you were going to.
I think what folks will take away from listening to this podcast is, regardless of their age, their experience, they'll get to hear, one, what is something that I already know that would be great to be validated by another smart driven woman. And for the older, more experienced, I should say, not older folks, for
We are
the
older.
more,
We made it. We earned it, right?
yeah, I would say for the more experienced women, it's hearing that change in the wind of the younger generation going, yep, it's okay to label this. It's okay to talk about this. It's okay to bring this up. It's okay to feel this. And what I think what the younger generation, your smart driven women starting that journey, continuing that journey, I think what they'll take away from it is hearing, one, how different things are from when smart driven women were paving the way, but two, also that it's okay to come across challenges. I think for the younger generations, what's really important is to start identifying who those mentors are going to be, but also who those sponsors are going to be. You have your mentors and you have your sponsors, and typically the mentors are there to provide advice, right? And they're going to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But what sponsors typically do are they're going to go, I agree, you should do this, you should do that. Let me open that door for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make this introduction. And not everybody is going to be a mentor or a sponsor. There are very select few who are going to be that in your life. And I think trying to find those people early on is really important. You're always going to come across negative people, negative women, even in your journey. And I think it's important to not focus on what they say or how they're approaching things, because obviously that's not who's going to be in your personal board of advisors.
Yes, how to compartmentalize, or how to actually, I think sometimes even we turn those naysayers into bigger monsters in our mind, right? We apply our self-doubts to their face and then it becomes huge. So just being able to say, I recognize you and I'm pushing you out, and I recognize people who are going to be supportive and lifting and even just listening and laughing with me on, oh yeah, that happened. I know what that is, those are the people that when you recognize them, you keep them closer, right? You bring them into your circle.
And so for the younger generations, I think this is such an interesting question for you, Laura, considering you have two young daughters. What can they do right now in their lives, in their world? What can they do to help them with that roadmap, with that path that they're on to pursuing their identity or their goals as a young, smart driven woman?
Yeah, for people really just starting out, it is keep every relationship that make sure that you do not discount your relationships. Do the very next thing that you need to do, and that will put you a little bit closer to your goal. We always say we can't really control the outcomes, but we practice and prepare for the things that we want. So if you can say that you did the practice and you can say you did the preparation, then you may not get the outcome you want, but you will say you did your best. You will be able to say you did your best. I think it continues on even into like middle management or mid-career times, that to me is one of the most challenging areas, because here's where you're in a huge learning curve. Like you can entry level and people are forgiving, and people are like, oh, they're starting out. People want to help you. It's almost like when you're pregnant, people want to help you. As soon as you have the baby and your hands are full, nobody's opening doors for you anymore. Like,
like, you should have this by now. You should have this down by now. What are you doing?
But I think in middle management, you are on such a huge, steep learning curve that you are your worst own critic, and you believe everything you're doing is wrong, and you may even be in, that desperate time where you just don't feel like you're ever going to get it. And when you're doing that's a darker time, I think, even than when you're just starting out, because you have to just stop and listen. When people are like, no, that's not exactly what we're talking about, you really do want to make it personal. You do want to take it personally, but have grace, have understanding that these criticisms or these critiques are coming from a place where people are really trying to get you to a place that you can't even see, around a corner that you don't even know what's around the other side. And for me, that level of learning across that middle management time was, you feel like you know so much and have so much to give, and you're so eager, but you could not be more off point sometimes. And so it's very confusing. It's very, very confusing.
Yeah.
So just really try and be objective, turn off your personal meter, and make sure that you are listening and thinking, okay, this person only wants me to write the best book I can write. Your editor is going to come back and you're going to be like, how did you not like this book I wrote that I poured my soul into, and it's all now in red? But your editor is just trying to get that best book out, right? They're helping you.
Yeah. Sage words. Well, I'm excited for the season that we have ahead of us, and for the many different perspectives and advice and tactics that all the smart driven women will share. I really do hope that women who are starting out, who are mid-levels, who are seasoned executives, find a good community with the folks that we have coming on. Thanks for helping us do that, Laura.
So excited. I cannot wait to tune in every time.
So essentially, if you are a smart-driven woman or know of a smart-driven woman that is just starting this journey or have been in this for a while, share them this podcast. Have them email us. We would love to hear from them too. Thanks.